All right, so welcome to the final screencast for Chapter 1. This one is on that fifth foundation of economics, the idea that trade creates value. So in this class, we're going to talk a lot about markets. And so what are markets? Well, markets are just things that bring buyers and sellers together to exchange goods and services. That's what a market is. And that exchange of the goods and services is trade. Often when we hear trade discussed in the news, they're talking about trade between countries. But for right now, we're just going to think about trade between individuals. Trade is just the voluntary exchange of goods and services between two or more parties. All right. So the key word here that I want to highlight is that it's the voluntary exchange of goods and services. All right. You don't engage in trade if it makes you worse off. All right. So think of it this way: if I go to the sandwich shop and I buy a sandwich, well, what's happening there? I am giving them money because I value that amount of money less than I value the sandwich. And they are giving me the sandwich because they value the money I'm giving them more than the sandwich. Otherwise, I wouldn't give them the money for the sandwich if I valued the sandwich less, and they wouldn't give me the sandwich if they valued the money less, right? We're both getting something we value more. That's why we trade. You can think of this just in your everyday life when you trade things. Think of kids on the playground when they're trading things. You trade because you value the other thing more than you value the thing you're trading, all right? And that creates value. We now both have things that are more valuable to us, all right? So we've increased social welfare. We've increased utility, all the different kind of words that we're going to talk about by allowing for voluntary exchange. So without trade, you would have to produce everything that you wanted, right? You would have to produce your own food, your own clothing, your own housing, electronics. I'd have to make my own water bottles, my own bike, my own computer, my own lamps, all right? I'd have to cut my own hair, although some of you may think I do. I would have to do my own plumbing, dentistry, educate myself. You would have to do all those things on your own, all right? But we don't have to do that because usually people have different valuations of items. And the reason is because of something called comparative advantage. All right. Comparative advantage is a situation in which different individuals have lower opportunity costs than other individuals. All right. So, so the sandwich shop has a lower opportunity cost of making sandwiches than the, say, dry cleaners next door. The dry cleaners would have a high opportunity cost of switching to making sandwiches. The sandwich maker would have a high opportunity cost of switching to dry cleaning. All right. So they are doing the thing for which they probably have a comparative advantage. And all comparative advantage means is you have a lower opportunity cost than someone else. So if an individual has a comparative advantage in, say, being a college professor, it's because they have a lower opportunity cost than someone else who might incur a very large cost to be a college professor, all right? But because different people have different comparative advantages, meaning, again, just lower opportunity costs, that allows gains from trade to occur. So now I can go and buy the sandwich, and the sandwich guy can take that money and put his kid in San Jose State, all right? Everyone is doing something they have a comparative advantage in that allows us to exchange and create that value, right? If no one had a comparative advantage, then the sandwich guy couldn't make the sandwich any cheaper than I could, all right? And then why would he take money from me for it? Because we would all value it the same way. So comparative advantage is one of the things that creates those different valuations of different items, all right? Another thing that allows for trade is specialization. So because we have different comparative advantages, we can specialize in those things. So I go not to Starbucks, but I go to Phil's or I go to the library to get my coffee. Now we have a little coffee maker here, but often I'm busy. I'm in a hurry to get something done. And at that moment, I value just paying someone who has already made the coffee than the time it takes to make it here in the office. You go to the doctor's office when you're sick rather than trying to treat yourself, all right? You don't have to do everything yourself because we often specialize in things we have the lowest opportunity cost in, all right? there are other things with trade when we take and we look at the bigger picture of trade. So when you and I exchange, if I pay you, if you buy my bike from me, I give you the bike, you give me the money, we can be pretty sure that we've created value, because you wouldn't have given me the money for the bike unless you valued the bike more than the money. I wouldn't have given you the bike unless I valued the money more than the bike, right? We both valued the other thing more. Well, often we extrapolate this to trade between nations. And while most economists would agree that overall, in total, countries are better off when they trade with one another. Let country A do what they have a comparative advantage in, let country B do the thing they have a comparative advantage in, and then trade. It's the same logic as the individual. However, it's not as clear-cut that everyone will be better off. In fact, it's probably not true that under open trade, everyone will be better off. All right? Because think about India and China currently have a comparative advantage in labor-intensive goods over the United States. So what has happened over the past 25, 30 years is that many labor-intensive jobs have moved to those places where they have that comparative advantage. And we trade instead of doing all that labor-intensive work here in the U.S. Well, overall, again, economists are almost unanimous that this is a better off state of the world. If you have to pick a closed state of the world where each country does everything and an open trade system, most economists say definitely the world is better off that other way. But there are individuals who are hurt, right? Americans whose skill was in those highly labor-intensive jobs, they now no longer have labor-intensive jobs to get. And of course, it's not easy for them to just retrofit and go into another job. Now, over time, their children may choose different jobs, and their children may move to different areas. But in the short run, you know, we have to take into account that these workers are not going to be better off. They would be worse off. So what I'm cautioning against is this idea that we often hear trade makes everyone better off. And that's not necessarily true if the unit you're looking at is countries or even states, between two states. But it is true that most economists think, you know, it is a better state of the world. We do get higher standards of living overall. So the thing I want to leave you with now is something from a show that I don't really watch, but when I go home to visit my parents in Georgia and my brother, they love this show. They love this Pawn Stars show. But the thing I want you to notice is the different valuations that the two have for the items. And trade happens when the money that the guy who owns the pawn shop offers is more than whatever the item is worth to the person bringing it in. And he only makes that offer if the item is worth more to him than the money he gives. All right. So notice this. You'll see a few trades that happen, a few that don't. It's kind of an entertaining clip. And you'll see those differing valuations leading to the creation of value.